Shalom and welcome, brothers and sisters, to the topic of wisdom. In the previous video, I shared with you about wisdom having two hands. And in the left hand is the gift, riches and honor. And in the right hand, the gift, length of days. I also shared with you that in Matthew chapter 25 verse 33, Jesus himself said that he will set the sheep on his right hand and the goats on the left. So, what does it mean by that? In Matthew 25 verse 41, Jesus said, "Then he will also say to those on the left hand, 'Depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels.'" So we know that those on the left hand are cursed. It means that there is a tendency that those on the left hand are walking into destruction. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, let us not walk by the left hand of wisdom, but instead the right hand of wisdom. And today, I'm sharing with you about the right hand of wisdom, the length of days. The gifts in the right hand of wisdom will help us to be more than conquerors on earth. Therefore, let us understand the right hand of wisdom, the length of days.
What is right hand of wisdom, length of days? Before we proceed, I would like to highlight to you about the hands of wisdom. Let us turn to Proverbs chapter 3 verse 16. It is written, "Length of days is in her right hand, in her left hand riches and honor." I highlighted the word "in." This is to denote the length of days and riches and honor are gifts in the hands of wisdom respectively. They are not the hands of wisdom, but gifts. So having said the above, knowing that these are gifts, we can proceed to understand the meaning of length of days. To understand the biblical revelation for length of days, I would like to start with days first. Then we will proceed to length. So what is the biblical revelation for days? Let us turn to Genesis chapter 1 verse 4 to 5. It is written, "And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day." So what this verse speaks about was God refers the light as day, and the light is good. Therefore, day is good. Let us now turn to John chapter 9 verse 4. This is the words of Jesus. "It is written, I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work." So here, the day, it is the time to do good works, because day is good and it is for work. Therefore, the biblical revelation for day is the time to do good works. Let's look at Psalms chapter 23 verse 6. "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Because we have understood from the verses earlier that the word day is the time to do good works. Therefore, in this Psalms chapter 23 verse 6 speaks about goodness and mercy shall follow if we are to do good works. Hence, the summary for the biblical revelation of days refers to the time to do good work, and God's goodness and mercy shall follow when the action is to be carried out. Now let us see what is the biblical revelations for length. Let us start with Proverbs chapter 3 verse 2. "It is written, for length of days and long life, and peace that will add to you." This verse shows us that length of days is not equal to long life, because if it is, it would be written as "for length of days is long life," but it says "and long life." Therefore, length of days is not equal to long life. Now let us turn to Joshua chapter 10 verse 12 and 13. Verse 12, "Then Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day." So take note of this. Joshua was talking to God in the day, and we have already understood what is the meaning of day. So here Joshua wants to do good works according to the purpose of God. Then to continue the verse, "When the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Aijalon. And in verse 13, so the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the people had revenge upon their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and did not hasten to go down for the whole day. Here we know that the day was lengthened for a purpose, and that is God's purpose. From this verse, we can understand what took place is a miracle when nature served the purpose of God. This is a very interesting story of Joshua chapter 10. I would recommend you to read the story and enjoy the miracle that God has put in His Word. So what we have here is a miracle when nature served the purpose of God. Now, because we know that this is a miracle of nature serving the purpose of God, let us turn to 1 Kings chapter 17 verse 16. The bin of flour was not used up, nor did the jar of oil run dry, according to the word of the Lord which he spoke by Elijah. If you know the story, Elijah knew what would happen. The bin of flour and the jar of oil did not run dry until it fulfills its purpose. Here again we have nature fulfilling the purpose of God in a miraculous way. Now I want to bring to remembrance the previous video about the left hand, riches and honor. If you watch again, you will notice that I say that riches and honor, or the gifts in the left hand, can run dry or run empty. The right hand is different. No matter what the quantity starts with in the right hand, it will not run dry or run empty until the purpose of God is fulfilled. This is the right hand of wisdom, the length of days. By knowing that, let us continue to proceed and see what other things can be under the length of days. Let's look at Matthew chapter 14, where it speaks about Jesus feeding the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. It is written in Matthew chapter 14 verse 17, and they said to him, we have here only 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Remember, it is not about the quantity. God can multiply them. In verse 20 and 21, so they all ate and were filled, and they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments that remained. Now those who had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. So the bread and the fish multiplied. Wow! Again, a miracle of nature fulfilling the good works to be done. Nature serving the purpose of God. Here, let us look at John chapter 6 verse 19. So when they had rowed about 3 to 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near the boat, and they were afraid. This verse spoke about Jesus walking on the Sea of Galilee, and the disciples were in a boat in the middle of the sea. So what is happening here is that density, again, nature, serve God's purpose. In the same chapter, the same story, in John chapter 6, let us look at verse 21. It is written, then they willingly received him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. The word here I highlight immediately. So what happened is when they brought Jesus into the boat, immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. Time capsule serves God's purpose. Nature serves God's purpose. It is like teleporting. Am I right? So, having understood what the biblical revelations for days and length, let us put them together and see what do we have. We can summarize length of days as the power and authority to supersede the law of nature to do good works, or according to God's will. This is the power of the kingdom of God. And if you notice, in all the miracles that I have shared with you above, they are miracles with understanding. It means that the one who is to perform the miracle knew what is to take place. In another word, these are miracles of truth. They are not miracles of grace, because grace is unmerited favor given to both good and evil. just and unjust, according to its season, to seek the truth. But miracles of truth is miracles with understanding, where the law of nature serves the will of God. If you recall, in the previous video, I spoke about the law that governs the earth, and I spoke about 3 different sets of law: the kingdom of God law, the nature or general law, and the law of the land. So these miracles that I shared with you in the length of days were according to the kingdom of God law. They are the gifts in the right hand of wisdom. And if you recall one of my earlier video, the purpose that Jesus was sent to the earth was to preach the kingdom of God. Therefore, the law of the kingdom of God supersedes the law of nature and the law of the land. In summary, length of days and riches and honor are gifts in the hands of wisdom, respectively. The biblical revelation for length of days, it is the power and authority over the law of nature to do good works, to fulfill God's will. So the servants of God can fulfill the will of God. And length of days, it is the miracle of truth and understanding. And the law of the kingdom of God supersedes the law of nature and the law of the land. Now, my brothers and sisters, if you realize that I have not covered what is the meaning of wisdom, I have only told you that wisdom has 2 hands, and what are the gifts in the hands of wisdom. So, the next video is, what is wisdom? Shalom.